Here.
Mrs. Host. Here. Mr. Peters.
Here.
Mrs. Wolf.
6 p.m. We're going to quickly review the vision and mission statements. The vision being Claymont City School District will provide each student an opportunity for a lifetime of success. And the mission statement being Claymont City School District creates an environment that nurtures, develops, and empowers each student. And we'd like to make a note that the next regular board meeting will be March 11th, 2024 at 6 p.m. here. Can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before you sit down, like if you remain standing, we'd like to just take a moment of silence for one of our staff members who we just lost recently, and Sherry Selena. Thank you.
Can we get a motion and a second to remove items O from the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Roll call?
Ms. Campbell.
Yes.
Mr. Peters.
Yes.
Mrs. Grandison.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Mrs. Host.
Yes.
And Mrs. Wolf.
Yes. We get an approval of the meeting agenda.
I motion. Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Peters.
Yes.
Ms. Campbell.
Yes.
Mrs. Grandison.
Yes.
Mrs. Host.
Yes.
Mrs. Wolf.
Yes.
Under accommodations, I'd like to be able to commend Mrs. Kristen Trimmer. Mrs. Trimmer will be serving on the board of directors for the Ohio State Council Association. In all honesty, this is a big deal for her, but also for our district, as we have an opportunity to have someone from our school system serving on the state level committee. We want to commend Mrs. Trimmer for her willingness to serve and represent Claymont. I'd also like to commend Carrie Kunkel. Carrie is going to be the CORA's Outstanding High School Teacher for 2024. CORA stands for the Coalition of Ohio Rural and Appalachian Schools. Carrie will go down with myself, Ms. Kahn, Ms. Barnhart, and I think she invited her husband along to receive this award on the 22nd of February. So that will be with all the other recipients within our region for CORA's. And I'd like to be able to thank the Uriksville Eagles for their $8,000 donation to Mr. Baldwin's class, for his class. And not on your agenda though, but I want to commend Mrs. Host. Mrs. Host has 10 years of service of school board member. And she's being invited to one of the Northeast Region's spring conferences to receive an award. So I want to congratulate you for that.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Can I just piggyback on the Uriksville Eagles? I think it's great that they give back to our school district. They do it in so many ways. But they also, the Claymont Booster Club, Lois and I and Logan Addison were the chair for the fundraiser that we just had. And the Uriksville Eagles organization took 100 of the tickets and sold them at their facility. So I think that's just wonderful. And I just wanted to make sure that they got the accolades for that as well. So. No public participation?
I did not receive any notes from anybody to participate.
Anything to add to administrative reports? CEA? Oh, sorry.
Just one thing, it's for accommodation. It's in my update about the problems we're having at the primary school with some of the backup in the parking lot and everything. And I'd like to thank Twin City Water Department and the city of Uriksville that we all kind of worked together and came up with a what I believe is a permanent solution, to that problem. And if Jen Leister was here, she'd say that's been a problem for about 20 years, is what she had told me. So, but just we've, cleaned out a lot of old pipes and things like that. So I appreciate, we, Twin City Water and the stuff that the equipment they have to be able to look at that was a huge help and a cost savings for us. So.
So did they remove the tree then? Is that what the
Yeah,
solution was?
the tree was the problem.
Right.
And yes, we did remove that tree. I am still trying to get any. I've gotten a little closer. There's one plaque that was a memorial tree, and there were some plaques around which we have taken up and we've temporarily moved. We haven't permanently placed them somewhere else. I am Kelly Robinson is the name. It was a girl that attended Eastport when it was in Eastport and passed away in 6th grade. And that was 1983. And I spoke with Tom Wolf, which I think was the principal at that time, and he kind of told me the story. And that's how we got that, but I've not been able to track down any immediate family member around here. So if anybody know, I mean, I've sent something out on the 922 list, and I just didn't want a family member coming back to a spot and it not be there and without us talking to them. So that is something I'm still working on, but we will be moving those. We will not be planting another tree there. That'll just be some grassy area and moving those closer to the building somewhere. So, okay.
CEA. Move on to board discussion. Student drug testing programs.
I want to jump back just a little bit, give you an update on the Altman Clinic. Beth and I met with them today, with the Altman staff. We do not know if the grant has been awarded. They had strongly anticipated being awarded. It would be a $1.4 million grant. We would be looking at, after we vetted several different project areas, from front of the building to in between the academic and the band room as an option. We've looked at now at the right-hand side, if you're looking at the building, the right-hand side, the science wing, as an area where we can look at doing an addition to the clinic. That would give us, they're looking at 2,000 to 2,500 square foot building. That would also have student access restricted to outside access, but it would also be available to the community as well. If they get the grant, it would be $1.4 million. Basically, they can build the building for their budget is $1 million. We did meet with an architect that has already been procured through the state process, and that is APG from Zanesville. They're an architecture firm from Zanesville. They feel that they can get that pricing together. This will go fast because as of right now, all the funds would have to be encumbered by September 24th. So we would be booking it to have that accomplished. One of the options that we could look at as we down the future, I wasn't ready to commit today, but we could possibly see if Buckeye would allow us to apply for a medical CTE career tech classroom. And then that would work right into the clinic. So any kids who are interested in going into healthcare, they could do some of their clinical work at that clinic as well. But if you know, through the career tech, any career tech application has to be approved by Buckeye first. And most generally, if they have the program, they're not going to let a homeschool or partner school have that program. So we may have to get somewhat creative to make that happen if this comes about. So that's in the process there. We are looking at that end of the building. They did suggest, in case we ever thought about expanding, to make it strong enough that you could put a second floor on top of that building as well. So that would be something that could be maybe down the road with that. And then I just want to give you an update on the solar panels. It was last week, we had like 7 companies come in and they're taking a look at the property. They have all the scope of schematics as far as the electrical. The deadline to apply is the 28th. There was a lot of interest as far as, from the outside companies, for that. So we're still moving, but we can still pull the plug on that at any point in time, so we're not locked in.
Cindy, did you have anything for Buckeye?
No, just. Moving through the year.
All right, we can go on to the student drug testing program.
I placed this on the agenda for us to discuss, and, over the weekend, we had a couple questions regarding, student drug testing program. We got into a little digging. March of 2017, there was a board, adopted policy regarding student drug testing for eligible students. Basically, that means any student who is involved in extracurricular activities. That could be athletics, that could be your band, your choir, your advisory groups, etc. And there is, through that policy, a parent opt-in that we have. Reason why this has been brought up was with the question whether we needed the policy. This felt we're preventative, and this would be one step if we were enacting had the program in place, we're doing random testing more frequently. We might be able to catch and prevent students, deter them from going a path of any type of illegal drug or alcohol. So the program is already in place. The Oh Yes report for Tuscarawas County just happened to come out last week as well. And some of the things that Oh Yes is, highlight that, is questions of a survey that are talking about demographics, alcohol, tobacco, vaping products, marijuana, prescription drug use, illicit drugs, bullying, safety and school climate, physical health and well-being, mental health and suicide, gambling, parental attitudes toward substance abuse, community and family and peer factors, and success. Jody Salvo uses this information as far as through the United Way and Ohio Guidestone. But one of the things we have, as I kind of want to highlight through that ODS. And one of the questions was, among of you, how many of you have consumed alcohol and more than just a few sips? And of those surveyed, between the ages of, I say 13 to 16, we had 53%, almost 56% of the students that were surveyed had more than one sip of the alcohol. And it starts, down from 11-year-olds and 12-year-olds. It's broken into 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and then 17 and older. But it also, some of the other factors that go into this, we had those that have tried vape or other illegal drugs. And even sometimes it's not a high percentage, it is a high percentage. But we still would want a 0 as an appropriate number to try to help prevent our students from going a path that they don't need to go. So this was something back in 17 that at least it was approved at that point in time to get ahead of the game and participate in that. So we've been asked, that's what I'm asking as far as the thoughts about enforcing and putting a program together that would actually follow through with our board policy.
I'd ask kind of what is our idea for discipline? Say we do drug test a student and they test positive. What do we do then? Are they suspended from whatever activity whatever extracurricular they're doing? Or what is it? Because I can tell you, I mean, just being young myself and knowing some students, I mean, if they test positive, pop on a drug test, and you suspend them from what they're doing, they're gonna say, screw it, I'm just gonna keep doing what I'm doing anyhow, since I can't do what I was supposed to be holding out for anyhow.
In the policy, there are like 4 steps. And the first step is that there's under the extracurricular, it's that they recognize that you tested positive and you enter into a program to get help. So once you've entered it in that, and then if you were randomly selected again and it's your second offense, then you're missing so much of your participation within that extracurricular. Then the third, it goes like the season, and you're still there. the punitive, discipline would technically be missing out on the extracurricular.
Right.
And then if your final last straw is that you could be done for your career. So,
So after the first one, would we start testing that particular student more regularly? Maybe not so, not so randomly, just, you know, make them aware, once you pop once, we will test you again. You will not, I mean.
They'll be involved in a program, correct? Is that what
be
you're saying?
involved in the program.
Program, that's the main thing. So it's not so much the discipline as it is, we're going to address the issue, you know, okay.
But yes, you can make sure that they are randomly selected each time or maybe more frequently.
Yeah.
So yeah, we can dictate that as much as we need.
Make that aware, because you said something about parent opt-in, so it would only be parents opting in, it would only be the students their parents opt into? Or would it be,
If you're currently as a policy reads, if you're in an extracurricular or co-curricular activity, you would have to agree to it to participate in that program. Say,
But only if you were in those activities.
it's only during activities. Say my kids didn't play anything or weren't involved in anything at school, which there are kids who aren't involved, they come to school and they go come to school and leave. But a parent could opt in and say, I want my kid to be involved in this because I want to make sure they're still on the straight and narrow as much as possible.
so the parent opt-in is only for the students who aren't involved in anything extracurricular, or co-curricular? Okay,
Currently, is that
Currently,
not the policy that you showing us,
well, the board,
that,
the board policy 7.32,
right,
it currently reads that there is a.
currently,
parent
but
opt-in.
this program wouldn't be that, it wouldn't be an opt-in, it would, if we say, okay, we say we're gonna accept this, then this program would be, everybody you wouldn't have to opt in, it would be the policy that we can randomly test.
That, what I shared with you in your,
Right.
in your update, it was basically the same thing as the board policy. Is that you would, as a athlete or band member or choir member.
Oh, just that, it wasn't for
And then-
everybody. Okay.
Right. And then
Okay,
you can opt in, there's an opt-in as well.
okay,
So either way, I'm just saying, we're at the point, we have the policy in place ready. It's just, it wasn't put in effect July 1, 2017, at that point in time, random testing. That policy currently reads 10% of the athletes or extracurricular students could be tested.
I'm sorry, why wasn't it, I mean, why was the policy written and then nothing done with it?
That I can't answer. None of the administrators in the district at this point, the high school or.
So
were involved.
who, and maybe it's different than private sector, like we have random testing, obviously, but that's a third party who does that to eliminate the potential for targeting, which is where Solomon's, I think, leaning towards on how do you make sure somebody isn't, like, you pick them all the time. So does a policy have us partnering with somebody that we would submit the student athlete names and they give us the list, or, I mean, or is the policy doesn't even go that far?
Policy
We wrote
just
it
goes-
and we just walked away.
Policy gives you permission to do so. So once we continue to move forward, it would be our responsibility to find a company that would actually follow through with it, partner with. What I gave you in your board packet with Great Lakes Biomedical. I did reach out with the Altman Clinic. And they are looking into what they can do as far as covering our. Basically doing this for us. And I was also trying to get more money for bang for a buck and having them do our bus physicals for our drivers. Our random for our bus drivers, but they have to be randomly selected as well. And then any other new staff that's go through the Altman Clinic. Versus using our current provider.
so if we would say we move forward with further discussion and stuff, so those are things that we need to decide, like, we'd have to pick a company to do the urine, somebody to do the picking versus having, them point out, Mrs. Cohen doesn't like me, so I got picked 20 times. So, you know what I mean? I'm just using that for example. So you'd have a random company picking and a place, and then would it still only be for athletes, or would it be a general random for the whole school? So like, if we're pill pop, I call them pills, but buttons or whatever, balls or whatever, and we pull out 6 balls, they could be somebody that's in the band, somebody that's in track, and somebody that's not in any sport. Is it gonna be, if we would open this new policy up, would it be the whole school, a random for the whole school where we would, pick 5% in January?
Yes and no.
Okay,
I'll go back to what my scenario, I don't, of my 2 children, they're not involved in anything other than coming to school.
so you wouldn't want them tested?
So I would go through, if I wanted them tested, I would fill out the registration forms and say, I'm opting in to have my kids tested. Versus, but not the other, another parent may say, I don't want them to do that, so they won't say, give consent.
Okay, so it's going to be optional, and it would be optional if you weren't, so it's not gonna be school-wide, it's gonna
No.
be an opt-in only program. Okay,
Right.
see, like at my place, it's not opt-in, you work there, you get your little pill put in the bottle.
You can't, you couldn't force it school-wide because anyone who's not in an extracurricular activity, you have to be at school. Being in extracurricular activities is a privilege, so that's where you draw the
We
lines.
should all come to school under the influence either.
No, and then if I did not opt in, my kid and one of my kids came to school that way, then I'm in paying the punitive discipline from the assistant principals for such behavior.
Okay,
So the procedure will then be added to the policy?
We can put the procedure, that becomes our guidelines. So, but yes, if we're taking a look at, it, so company A comes and says, company A does it for whatever amount per kid. And here's the steps and procedures, or company B, whichever one that we feel more comfortable working with.
and then we as a school district would be responsible for the cost of the testing.
Correct.
Correct.
Now,
And then also putting in place and assisting the student with the program, correct? Okay, would we also be responsible for since we're identifying, we're identifying that Lois has she's tested positive, so and she admits, I admit, I have a problem, so are we going to then place them, or then we responsible for the program too? So that would, you know what I mean? I'm just thinking outside the box here.
It goes to the parent,
Okay, we'll go back to the parent.
that they would take them to, and the parent would have to enroll their child into that program. And then by the current policy, there's so many days they have to get back to the supervisor or athletic director. Monday I tested, Friday I had my appointment, or everything, here's my paperwork. So if mom or dad is going to take me to class.
Another thing, I think I'm in mental health, so I'm thinking, I was like, so do we know if we have families that, certain insurances doesn't pay for that? Do we know if there's free programs? Can we look and see, one of the things when we're looking at this policy is looking at what is available to our students that don't have a package plan that would include a mental health evaluation. Some of it, like if you go to the county, but are they accepting, do they have the room to accept our kids that are coming? I'm just thinking, it's all right to identify a problem, but if we aren't gonna have solutions, then.
We do have an MOU for Village Network to be our social emotional counselors outside entity. So let me check into.
I just didn't know how far they went into, and how many, what's their capacity, not that we're gonna have.
The last couple of years, they can't take, they need counselors right
I
now.
know, that's what,
So
so I'm just looking, I mean, I know there's a lot of
We
crazy
do-
questions,
we
but
do refer students to them.
To
and
them.
they do their best to make sure they get into their program.
and I can check when I'm talking to people in mental health too, to see what else available to our students, and if we can set up some type of.
And this won't cause any more work for like our administration or our nurses, or, because it's all everything's gonna be taken care of by a different party.
It will cause us more work in the aspect of, once they test, and if someone does test positive, then on my end as athletic director or supervisor of the program, I have to make sure I'm following up with them to say, hey, did you enroll into this program? You had so many days to do that. That will be a little more work on my end as the athletic director or supervisor. As far as the whole process of picking the random testers. That's on the outside company. Currently, it would be the same thing for our bus drivers. They just say that, I don't know, they call the day up or they show up the day and say, hey, today's random drug testing day and we need you and you. And they go and randomly test.
And that's policy 7.32, is that what you said?
7.32.
Okay.
And back to Lois's question, just to verify. So in other words, if your kid, say, even is involved in like the honor society or student council or whatever, those are all included as well. But if, say, we decide to do random testing for 10% of all those kids involved, it's not just 10% of athletes or just 10% of those things. So it would be 10% of everyone, including the opt-ins, the parent opt-ins. Okay, just to verify.
Probably be all the names of all the students placed in that pool that are athletes, drama, choir, they'd all be placed and they pull random 10% from that.
Right.
And
We,
currently,
we at work do that too, so of course our guys don't have a choice.
well,
to get random
and
testing.
currently the policy more reads to high school level. But if you look at the OES surveys, there's
That
11.
was my next question, yeah.
So we need to maybe take a look at, do we go to
Middle
7th
school.
and 8th grade? As far as instituting it, because then that, or your 10%. Go a wider range of a student, but you're at least curbing or making an attempt to curb the students who are on, according to this survey, already trying stuff.
And maybe a policy will deter kids from like, look, I really enjoy doing this. Maybe maybe I should think again. I know we're trying all kinds of programs. I know in the middle school that they're doing all kinds of, and high school doing, to deter kids from. Unfortunately,
There's also the flip side of it, right? So Buckeye has a drug-free club that students willingly sign up for, and they're part of it, and they do testing, and there's, different celebrations or different things that you do to reward these student athlete or students in general. Some of them could be athletes or not, in making positive decisions in their life. So
That's what
it's just a different angle, because obviously Buckeye doesn't have the athletes, those are all homeschools. But it's just another way to maybe approach it or just think about it as well. I'm sorry? At Buckeye, yeah. Yeah. But he volunteered to participate, yep. Yeah, so it's another way that
that's what I
the
was.
good decisions kind of get rewarded. Sometimes unfortunately, these types of policies kind of are perceived as kind of like gotcha.
Yeah.
Policies, like, oh, I gotcha, you tested positive.
Yeah.
And to
That's
Lois's
what
point in Martha's, if we do something like this, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, I'm just saying, it's for discussion and we should have some other alternative options as well, is that if you identify someone,
absolutely.
we have to be in a position to help them. Right. And it probably does start more at the middle school, I would guess. That's where it's beginning. And then as they get older, it just perpetuates into a problem that by the time you get to them and they're a senior, they may not be able to be helped like they would be in 7th grade. So I think it's great discussion. I think we should continue talking about it. I'm gonna pull the policy because I don't have the policy. I mean, I've not read it, so shame on me. But
That's what I was gonna say, is if we can find a way to incentivize, the kids to do this, not just you get to continue doing your extracurricular activity, but say you go 4 years through high school without popping on a drug test, you get some kind of incentive. I don't know what that would be. I mean, we have to look into it and see what's practical and what we can do for them. Because I mean, hopefully we'd have a lot of people that we'd have to do that for. That's the idea. So we'd have to be something practical that, is.
when I know at Buckeye, there are a lot of businesses who make donations to that program specifically, whether it's, a free hamburger from, Wendy's or, whatever. And some people make monetary donations to help, with that. So just another option.
Well, and I did have brief, Ms. Khan and I did have brief conversations regarding that, it's the Drug-Free America.
Mhm.
So that with our CTE program, that would be provision to kind of look into that and make that as a, if they're opting in, they can say, I'm part of Drug-Free America, and that is a good resume builder.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and maybe the incentives that we may provide, if we do find some way to provide incentives, those incentives could also encourage more parents to opt their kids in. You're gonna get rewarded if you do get tested, and so. I think it's definitely something we should look into, and I would definitely like to look into the option of starting it at the junior high school as well.
Well, that means that the administrative team, as far as middle school administrative, high school, and athletic director will be sitting down and taking a look at our current policy and trying to make adjustments in how it affects in there. The one thing I was telling Kelsey today is that if we're at seventh grade and I get to violation 4 or 5, whichever is the death penalty, and I'm already in 8th grade, where's my hope then, if I got myself
Right.
cleaned up, where's my hope to come back to do those things?
Right,
And I still would like to see that be intertwined somehow.
100%, I agree 100%.
You have to have a positive at the end of the tunnel.
Move on to the treasurer's report. Can I get a motion and a second to approve the following treasurer's items?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, reviewing the financials for January. 7 months into the fiscal year already. So, we're looking at 58% of the current budget. So our revenues are slightly lower. Go ahead to the next. So total revenues are a little bit lower. They're at 54.52%. It is up 3.31% over fiscal year 23. Property tax, I did have received 2 advances in the month of February so far of $875,000. So I'm trying to stockpile my money in Star Ohio and just using this money for right now. So to get our revenues up again. Interest for the year now, we're at $260,823 for interest. Our expenditures, we're at 54.36%. So we're still lower than the 58%, 86.7% of salaries and benefits. And lost it?
Yeah. There's pages on the right-hand side. Over to your left now. See, it says 1-7 and then. There you go.
There you go. Okay. This is down 0.93% from last year. And the next one.
Say Jack's gonna fire you.
So total revenues on the year for general fund only, we're at $12.1 million with total expenses at $12.3 million. So in January alone, we had a deficit spend of $391,000, and for the year, we're at $140,000 deficit spend. With a true days cash of the 115.92 days. ESSER funds, this is ESSER 3 only. We had capital outlays of over $60,000. We've got the chiller projects that are almost done now. The chilled water coil conversion out of Paceville. We still have outstanding purchase orders of almost $380,000. You can see the projects that are still outstanding there. And the balance right now in the ESSER 3 is the $49,000 that we're earmarking for Chromebooks. Now we haven't paid anything that we do through Gardner. So the chillers, the chilled water conversions, anything, we get a discount if we pay within 10 days, and we've been on that to make sure we do that. So I think we should save at the end about $13,000 on that project. So that money will go towards our Chromebooks. So I'm hoping to get the bulk of the Chromebooks that we ordered at year end covered with this for the last year. And then here's the small state and federal funds. Through our grants, we had total reimbursements of $233,000 for January. Our food program for cafeteria was right under $50,000 for the month. So our ending balances, go ahead to the next one. That shows you the balances in each of those with a total fund balance of over $7.7 million. Any questions?
Where does that compare, like, say, the last year, the last several years?
They're all comparable. It's been, I kind of look back at that each year and we're sitting about the same as
So
we've been.
very
kind of the
consistent.
Last couple of years. Because I always look at my deficit, here we see the last year, how are we comparing? The deficit spend actually was better because I think in one of those reports that I've given. Last year at this time, we were at a $645,000 deficit. We're at $130,000 right now, so. I think I'm gonna try to get one more tax advance, before we get our final disbursements next month. So, and I did just get the rates, and dollar figures that we'll be approving in March from the county auditors for taxes. And it looks like it went up $110,000. I think that's what it was. I'm just glanced at it real quick, in tax revenue for this calendar year. So then the items I have on there to approve is the financial reports for January, the payment of bills from January. There were 3 meeting minutes in there for organizational and the board meeting on January 8th and the special board meeting on February 1st. To accept the donation from Eric Eagles of $8,000. Mr. Baldwin, my understanding, he's using it to purchase items to help for the kids to build computers and stuff themselves. So that would be a long process for them. And then there was some mid-year adjustments I was needed to make on the appropriations and revenues.
Roll call?
Ms. Campbell,
Yes.
Mrs. Host,
Yes.
Mrs. Grandison,
Yes.
Mr. Peters,
Yes.
and Mrs. Wolf.
Yes.
Can we get a motion and a second to approve the following superintendent items?
So moved.
Second.
All right, reviewing the following items, we have the 2023-2024 athletic coaching supplementals. I go through that list. Brennan Shaver, junior high track, Annette Cox, junior high track, Amanda Wallace, junior high track, Kennedy Beckles, junior high track, Blake Cameron, their track volunteer, Blake Leinert, boys assistant track, Andrew Avery, baseball volunteer, Ian Miser, boys assistant track, Mark Alba, girls assistant track, Jeff Arthur, track volunteer, Brian Awful, track volunteer, and John McCluskey, spring weightlifting. Going into the 2024 school year, we have some supplementals there for volleyball, golf, cross country, and weightlifting. And I just want to make a point of emphasis that Brennan and Brett Wrench, yes, they are my children. Last year they were coaches. No one applied for that position, and no one applied this year other than them. And they understand, that could change going into next year as well. But they thoroughly enjoyed last year and I'm really looking forward to this year. It approved the 1.5 unpaid days for medical leave for Stacy Dunn. And that would be effective through the dates that are listed. Approved actual program for Jane Lasecki for the winter session and Courtney Beckley for spring session, and they would be paid a $1,500 stipend to complete of each respective session. That's paid through Title V funds. So I know Jane had probably 20 kids last in the winter 1, and she's got anticipating about the same for winter 2, and Courtney's hoping to get about the same for spring. Approve the following volunteers and in music and drama programs. I want to make a point of emphasis that Carrie Kunkel and Braden Smith are music only, and the rest are drama only. So they're listed those folks. Membership into the 2024-2025 OHSSA. So we have our membership for our athletics. Approve the grievance settlement with CEA as was presented within your update. Approve the memorandum of understanding with Notre Dame College for student teacher field hour placement. And the memorandum of understanding for Stark State College for College Credit Plus for next school year as well. Enter into the National Cooperative Purchasing Alliance and partners for consortium pricing for cost savings and utilizing negotiated rates. And so we enter into that, and by entering into that, we are able to receive reduced costs for two paving projects that are coming up this spring, summer. One will be at the elementary for their parking lot, and then the other one will be for the parking lot behind this building as well. And then we have New Philadelphia Concrete Construction, so $8,180. They're going to tear out the existing wall. And that will be at the elementary school, and they're also going to repair that column. If you look at that column on the side, it needs a little bit of TLC. And then approve the service agreement with AT&T for phone services. We have removed item O and board policies. Go back to the board policy committee and regarding the following updates. So I know Solomon was going to talk an update about that.
Yeah, sorry. The code of student conduct and the facility dogs, I'm trying to get this down here. I apologize. So the student conduct, we changed some wording. There was a item N that said no high school students are permitted to ride the elementary or middle school bus. And I don't think that's ever been an enforced rule. I mean, I remember when I was in school riding on the bus with high school kids when I was in elementary school. I don't see that as ever been a enforced rule. So I don't think it should be in our policy. I mean, the way we have
It was removed. I understand you.
that
just said removed.
it was removed from the policy.
Okay.
And that's all for the student conduct on school buses. See here. The district facility dogs, we did not have a policy on district facility dogs. So we kind of created a policy on it, just talking about how the dog must be spayed or neutered, the dog must be clean, well groomed, in good health, housebroken, immunized. The dog must have earned a public access certification or its equivalent, must be under the direct supervision or control of its handler at all times, treated and kept free from fleas, ticks, and other insects, and it must wear identification at all times. That's the essence of the policy. The student transportation management, there's a rule in there that needed some updated wording. It was talking about students must not use or possess nicotine, tobacco products, electronics. So we added to that. We ended up changing it to, get back to it. Saying that all nicotine and or tobacco products are prohibited, such products include, but are not limited to, cigarettes, cigars, electronic smoking / vaping devices, smokeless chewing tobacco, and tobacco-less nicotine pouches. One thing that was missing from the original update was the nicotine pouches, and I knew, just being in the workforce and knowing people, that there's new nicotine pouches that aren't tobacco. They're called they're usually of the Zen or Rogue brand, and they're kind of new on the scene. So I understood how they were kind of not specified, but we ended up specifying that in the policy. And then let me just check out. You look at that. Oh, there was the code of student conduct. There was updated wording, that there was wording in there about kids not being able to carry pagers and stuff like that. So we updated that to cell phones, because I'm 25 and no time in my school career was anyone carrying a pager. So
Way to rub that in.
we updated the wording in that to say cell phones or mobile devices.
You're not allowed to carry them. Is that what you said?
Oh, or sorry.
No. He said, what about cell phone?
Let me get to this. It says violation.
Wording.
Building or classroom rules or directives from staff. So I guess that goes on a school to classroom basis with the rules on having those, whether the school says you can't carry them, they gotta be in your locker, whatever it is. Either way, it's not pagers anymore. It's now cell phones and personal communication devices.
And the policy then is it's room to room or building to
says-
building?
It says, let me get back to it, lost it again. It says it's a violation of school building or classroom rules. So it would be from the building or the specified classroom. I don't know about our policy as far as a school district. I think that wasn't in the thing, but it just says in this policy, violation of the school building or classroom rules. So it's direct policies by the principal, teachers, people would take whatever they.
Each handbook addresses that in the
Oh,
handbook.
okay, so each school's handbook address, okay.
So then, some of them might say, as long as it doesn't disrupt class, it can only be maybe during lunch. Some of them say only downtime whenever we're in class.
So this just refers it back to the handbook, okay?
Yeah, and also under the student code of conduct, we did separate and added bullying as its own separate item. We've been having some EMIS issues as far as currently under EMIS, bullying, intimidation, and harassment were linked together. So this will change that code of conduct for us. Identifying bullying as its own.
That's in the new
That would be
conduct
new
policy.
policy, yeah.
Another change that we made was a violation of any executive orders or laws or policies, rules, regulations, or directives concerning social distancing, hand washing, wearing of masks. It originally said in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. It's been changed to in response to infectious diseases. So
Respond to what?
in response to infectious diseases,
Hopefully it never.
So-
So health department.
but either way, that now all infectious diseases are covered and not just COVID-19. So that was all the changes we made to policies.
And then, thank you.
Yes, sir.
And then overnight field trip for the next school year for the sixth grade students. And then also approved Lenny O'Gwen as a substitute coach. That'll be retroactive to February 7th.
Roll call?
Mrs. Host,
Yes.
Ms. Campbell,
Yes.
Mrs. Grandison,
Yes.
Mr. Peters.
Yes.
And Mrs. Wolf.
Yes.
And I just received a text message from just while you were all here. TC Cottrell, the tentative agreement that we had with OC, they did ratify, or they voted in favor of that, so we'll need to ratify that contract. The tentative agreements are in your shared drive in on your Google account, so you can take a look at those. But we will need to set a meeting at some point to ratify their contract. Awesome.
Can we get a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Yep. So.